Hey guys, Sensei Craig coming at you from the Samurai Virtual Dojo. For those of you watching on Patreon, big shout out and a big thank you to you from all of us here at the Samurai Virtual Dojo team and Samurai Karate Croydon. We couldn't do all of this content without your ongoing support. We hope you're enjoying the content, so thank you very much. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, thank you very much for watching our content. We hope you're getting something out of it. If you're watching on YouTube and haven't already, please give us a like and a subscribe, and hit that notification bell as well. That way you'll be notified whenever we release a new video. Remember, Samurai Virtual Dojo is all about bringing you technical and instructional karate videos to improve your martial arts training and help you train at home in isolation, as well as with other people, to get the best out of your martial arts and your karate. So, thanks heaps for supporting us, whether it's on Patreon or YouTube, and look forward to getting into this foundation skills session with you. Os! Os! Okay. So, in today's fundamentals or foundation skills session, really excited about this one. I've been thinking about this one for a couple of weeks. Going to bring you some information on how to develop your kata, particularly after you've first learned a kata. So you may have been to class with your instructor, okay, and you might have learned the sequence of a new kata. Now, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be, for the demonstration phases, using a very simple learning kata from the Shidoryu system, and that is our version of PINAN. Okay, so the version of PINAN as I learnt it from my instructor. By no means, let me just get this right up front, as I've said in previous videos, by no means is this the definitive version of PINAN. I'm not for a moment suggesting that the way I do it, or the way we do it, is the way that Itosu Sensei did it or Mabuni Sensei did it. Okay, so if in your dojo you do a slightly different version of PINAN, that's absolutely fantastic. These exercises will still work for you. And also, the other fantastic thing about today's session is no matter what your level or what kata you're working on, these exercises work or will work for you. They'll work for any kata. Of course, the longer the kata, the more difficult and more complex it becomes. So anyway, I'm excited to bring you this session. Been thinking about it for quite a while. Let's get into it. Os. Welcome back. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to run through a series of exercises today to help you improve a kata that you've just learnt. The kata that you've just learnt the sequence of. Now, quick disclaimer, you do need to understand or know the segments or the chapters within the kata, or as some instructors say, the individual fight sequences within the kata. Remember, the kata is not one gigantic fight versus many people. In my dojo, in the Samurai Dojo, I talk about the kata in similar to a book with chapters. I say a kata is like a book about a particular subject, and each fight represents a chapter within that book. Okay, so if you haven't already checked it out, check out our PINAN video for those of you who are our Patreon subscribers and Patreon members. Check out our PINAN video. In that video, we go through the chapters of PINAN. I'll just do a quick review here. Okay, so the first chapter of PINAN is this section here where we turn into cat stance and strike with the hammer fist strike and step and punch, followed by that 180-degree turn here, striking again and stepping over and punching. So that's chapter 1 of PINAN. When we're doing these exercises, we'll be working on them in a chapter format, because even with something like PINAN NIDAN, the entire KATA gives us too much to focus on. So that's why we're going to split it up into chapters. Okay, so chapter 2 of PINAN NIDAN, from this position here, is of course this section where we come towards the Shulman, or the front, and we get the 3 step over RUK movements. Okay, so that's chapter 2. So when we're working on chapter 2, we start at the end of chapter 1 and we just perform those movements from chapter 2. Just like when we're working on chapter 1, we start here and just work on the movements of chapter 1. Okay, so let's have a quick look and refresh what is chapter 3. So remember, chapter 3 is your 45-degree angle blocks and punches, and then from here, 1, 2, and 3 punches. Alright, so that's chapter 3. Just one more chapter to go, chapter 4, and we'll be done. Okay, so chapter 4 commences from the final punch of chapter 3. Excellent, and that's chapter 4. So, if you're a novice or a beginner and you haven't been working on PINAN NIDAN for very long, I'd recommend you just review those chapters there. So those are the 4 chapters you'll need to understand to complete the following exercises. Okay, so as I said before, a lot of information and exercises to cover today. So we're going to put some information down in the description below so that you can sort of keep track of what you're doing. Like I said, the first step is to understand the chapters of the kata that you are practicing or wanting to develop. Okay, let's have a look at exercise number 1. Okay, so the first thing we're going to complete is a chapter-based review of the movements of the kata. Okay, so we're going to complete chapter 1, just chapter 1. We're going to do it 5 times, or 5 sets of chapter 1. And this is to reinforce the kata chapter by chapter. Okay, when you've learned to kata, yes, you can practice it from beginning to end, but a lot of the time when I'm working on kata, and particularly elite athletes, when they're working on kata elite athletes, when they're working on kata, they work on a chapter at a time, sometimes, a lot of the time, even just a movement at a time to enhance it. And this instructional or fundamental session today is about improving a kata that you want to work on. Okay, so in the case of PINAN NIDAN, what I'm going to do is, nice and strongly, not too quickly, focusing on technique, connection, strength, I'm going to complete chapter 1 5 times in a very focused manner. And so on. Now, were you watching? Did you notice that I was paying attention to individual elements throughout the chapter? So I was really conscious about turning my head, looking before I changed direction, placing my foot before turning, keeping my core nice and strong, getting that separation between step and technique. So for example, from here, step stepping and then executing technique. All of those fundamentals that are really important. Now, just a quick note. Why, you might ask, why not just do the whole kata, sensei? It's not too long. Because the focus required is quite intense. So really important that we just look at it in a chapter format. I find with a lot of students, when I used to try and do a whole kata like this, particularly more novice students, the kata would start to, go downhill after about the halfway point. However, when you practice it in a chapter format, 4, 5, 6 movements, and the person gets to reset their brain. Have a little break. Just 1, 2, 3 seconds. Reset the focus, start again. And I found over the years it's a far more practical method and people get better results. Okay, so that's our first exercise for developing our kata. Maybe a kata that you've just learned, or a kata that you're improving for grading or for competition. You're going to perform each chapter with that really intense focus on technique, strength, connection, 5 times. When you've completed that, we move on to the next exercise. Awesome. Fantastic. Okay, so now that we've completed the first exercise, which was to complete each chapter of our kata 5 times with that focus on strength, good technique, connection, all that sort of good stuff, we're ready to move on to the next exercise. You might do this one in the same session, or you might break these exercises up over a period of days or different training sessions for yourself. Okay, so in this next exercise, we're going to practice each chapter, but we're going to split the kata into 2 parts, or the movement, into 2 parts. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out the hands and perform the kata with our legs, just focusing from the hips down. Okay, so quite often in the dojo I refer to this as a legs only practice. Okay, so the kata, when you perform it legs only, although technically without the hands I guess it's not really a kata. Alright, when performing the movements of the sequence legs only, it looks literally how it sounds, legs only. Hands, we can just pop them here by your side, behind your back. Alright, and from this position we're just focusing on things like foot placement, core, nice deep stances, that sort of thing there. From here, as you can see, moving into that next part of chapter 1, focusing just on the core, the positioning of the feet, the stance, and I would perform each chapter like that 5 times. Now, why is this one so valuable? Now, if you said it gives you less to focus on, so that you can have a more intense focus on certain elements, you'd be correct. Okay, so without the hands moving, particularly when we're first developing a kata, by taking the hands out, we're giving ourselves less, technique or skills to manage. Skill management is a big part of karate training, or any sort of training or development. Think about it. On that first move, I've not only got to position my foot, turn my hips and my feet correctly, drop into my stance, get all that correct. If I'm doing the hand movements as well, I've got to make sure I wind up my hands correctly. I've got to drop that strike in. There's a lot to manage there. So by taking the hands out, we're just working on managing those elements from the waist down. So we can give those elements a greater focus and improve them more. Don't worry, we'll bring the hands back later. So we complete chapter 1, 5 times, legs only. Chapter 2, 5 times, legs only. So from this position here, hands behind the back, focusing on things like foot placement and turning sharply. Then from here, breaking the weight, breaking, stepping smoothly, breaking, stepping smoothly, keeping that core connection. And there's chapter 2, performed legs only. I would complete that 5 times. Then move on to chapter 3, 5 times legs only. Chapter 4, 5 times legs only. So that's our second exercise. Complete each chapter 5 times legs only. Or